Russians beat us into space. We didn't deny Sputnik was up there. We didn't argue about the science or shrink our research and development budget. We built a space program almost overnight, and 12 years later, we were walking on the moon.
Roger, 11. We've been, I've just been vectored to another monitor, and sure enough, the browns are coming in a lot more distinctly on the IDA4 that we have up on our screen in the control center. Over. Okay, world, hold on to your hat. I'm going to turn you upside down.
Earth, first step foot upon the moon, July 1969, AT. I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
What?
It was a sound stage in New Mexico.
That never happened.
Let each man say what he deems truth, and let truth itself be commended unto God.
God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together in one place." The dry land appeared. It was so. And God called the dry land what? Earth, earth, earth. Now go to verse 14. God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs, seasons, for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light to the earth." And it was so, and God made two great lights. All right, what are these lights? The what? Sun and the moon. Did you just read in your Bible that the earth is older than the sun? Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You just read in your Bible that the earth was here before the sun. Right? You certainly did. Now, that's a big deal. Now, here's what you get into. There's two big words I'm going to throw out here to you. That's what I'm giving to you. And I want you to think about it. Geocentric and heliocentric. So what does that mean? It's just a big word. You pay for the education, let the folks know you've been to school. Here's what it means. Geocentric means that the earth is the center of the universe. Heliocentric means that the sun is the center of the universe, known universe, our solar system, and everything revolves around the sun. With a geocentric view, the sun and everything revolves around the earth, and the earth is fixed where it is. Now, here's the thing. My little excursion into this has revealed that most of the people that believe in a geocentric view of the earth also believe that the earth is flat. I'm going to throw some things out there for you this morning. I love debate. If what you believe is real, and you really believe it, and you have a foundation for that belief, you should be able to defend it. I have no respect for somebody who says, "Well, I believe this and that," and you don't have anything to back it up. I'm not saying I believe in a flat earth. No. But there are some interesting points they make. Let me give you one. How many understand if the earth is a ball out here in space, then it has a curvature to it, right? It has a curvature. It's going to have a curvature. You're going to see a curvature. Now, what's going to be more apparent is the higher you get, the more you're going to be able to see the curvature, right? In other words, you have to get to a point in space where you're able to look down on the earth and see the curvature of the earth, and therefore prove without a doubt that the earth is round. Now, this gets into the scientific geology or geography or whatever they are, who measure things like this. But did you know that in Lake Michigan, Chicago, Illinois sits on the western bank of Lake Michigan? How many of y'all know that? Chicago, Illinois, it's a good-sized town. At one time, Chicago was the second largest town in America. Chicago, Illinois. It sits right there. It butts right up against Lake Michigan. Right up against it, Lake Michigan. You can go 40 miles across the peninsular part of Michigan. I forget the name of the town over there, and it's in another state. And you can get out there on a boat 40-something miles away from Chicago and look across Lake Michigan, and you can see the skyline of Chicago, Illinois. A meteorologist was talking about what he called what is that thing? A mirage. A mirage. A phenomenon of a mirage. That makes sense, doesn't it? That makes sense for the curvature of the earth. How many are following me here now? See, he was trying to explain to people, how can we 40 miles away see Chicago?
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
And he was explaining to them how that the light was coming up and bouncing back down, and it was a mirage. You weren't really seeing Chicago by looking straight at it. You were seeing a reflection of Chicago through the clouds and the atmosphere and whatever else is up there. So these guys up there, they got in this boat. You've always got somebody like this. They hooked up their cameras. They had to wait for a certain day to come clear enough, because 40 miles is a long way to see, folks. And they got in their boat, and they hooked up their cameras, and they focused in on Chicago. You could barely see it, barely, because of the haze and the distance. But they kept their cameras trained on Chicago, Illinois, and they began to cross Lake Michigan. And do you know something? Nothing ever changed except Chicago got clearer. Now, if you're following me in all of this, here's the point. If the earth is curved, they should not have been able to see Chicago 40 miles away. Is that right? I'm not saying I believe it, but it makes me think. How did they see Chicago? Airline pilots, when they go up, flight level, let's say 30, 35, in other words, 30,000 or 35,000 feet in the air. Let's say they're up there at 35,000 feet. As they rise in that aircraft, did you know what amazing thing happens? The horizon rises. Now, if the horizon was curved, would it rise or would it fall? So you believe in a flat earth? No, but I believe in listen to what they got to say. You see, here's their point. Their point is that God made the earth, and he made everything else as it relates to the earth. And the earth is the center of God's plan for man. And that it is here the issue of sin and salvation is settled. And that because of that, the earth is primary and is of primary importance in God's creation. In plain words, you're not going to find anything out there that is nearly as important as what you've got going on here. Now, as far as that's concerned, I go with them 100%. I'm going to read a little more about the flat earth. Here's why. I may never believe the earth is flat, but I may learn a lot of things from it that may help me understand my Bible in ways that I could never understand it before.
The design of this deeply hidden plot has been to change the perception of the masses regarding the authority of the Bible, the correct shape of the earth, the layout of the universe, and the Creator's position in it. This change in perception has prepared minds for the overwhelming delusion to come upon the world under the first woe, the fifth trumpet, prophesied in Revelation chapter 9. This delusion will be a demonic attack under the pretext of an alien invasion. Reportedly, Vladimir Lenin observed, "A lie told often enough becomes the truth." This quote is discovered within the belief of most. The Earth is a sphere. It spins through space while orbiting the Sun, hurtling thousands of kilometers an hour inside our Milky Way galaxy. So ingrained is this belief, if one speaks of the words flat Earth, listeners snicker. The mental reflex of a flat plane from which a person might fall into an infinite space creates this disrespect. A globe Earth, because unproven, is pseudoscience, yet believed worldwide and passed from generation to generation, and any who question it is mocked and ridiculed.
If I say that the world is round and someone else says it's flat, that's worth reporting. But you might also want to report on a bunch of scientific evidence that seems to support the notion that the world is round.
We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. They must have been founding members of the Flat Earth Society. They would not have believed that the world was round. Looked around at this flat, beautiful land, and all this sun. I asked the question, how many days of sun do you get a year? 320. That's pretty good.
And in case there are any conspiracy theorists out there, how would you prove to us that you're in zero gravity?
The humility to, I don't understand.
Look, I'm the one who's having humility. I'm saying we should have a debate here. You guys are saying that the debate is shot.
How about we just listen to scientists?
That's what I'm saying. Listen to scientists. Have the humility to believe people who know things you don't.
It's like people like you guys who are saying, no, we can't have a debate on this.
The debate is over. At some point, the debate has to be.
You're the one should have some humility. Say, wait a minute, there are a lot of people who disagree.
Should we still debate whether the Earth is flat?
Yeah.
No, I'm asking you. You're saying every debate should go on. That's not how science works. At some point, you reach its consensus and you debate the next issue. The next issue being, how do we deal with climate change?
Scientists are wrong all the time.
For millennia, well-educated people believed the Earth was flat and placed at the center of the universe, enclosed there with a protective covering. In the early 16th century, Nicolae Copernicus introduced a different model of the universe in which the sun lay at the center and the Earth revolved around it. Copernicus' heliocentric model is taught today, while the earlier geocentric model has been utterly rejected. Less than 100 years later, Galileo was persecuted by the Catholic Church for promoting Copernicus' theory and forced to recant his beliefs and spend the last years of his life under house arrest. Galileo's persecution for promoting heliocentrism is surprising, as the Catholic Church initially supported Copernicus' theories. Copernicus' theory of a heliocentric universe was well known at the upper strata of the Catholic Church in his lifetime. While he preferred his theories published after his death, he ultimately agreed to publish his manuscripts on the persistent appeals of high church officials. Catholics were not first to reject Copernicus' views, for they themselves admit opposition was first raised against the Copernican system by Protestant theologians for biblical reasons. The Catholic Church advanced Copernicus' heliocentric model, constantly urging him to spread it abroad, together with other theories that opposed the sacred scriptures. The necessity to change public conception from an accurate belief in a flat, enclosed earth to a false belief grew slowly. With sapient baby steps, the whole world would become amenable to the final delusion of an alien invasion under the first woe. The Catholic hierarchy had the perfect opportunity to lay groundwork for a global deception to culminate in this Earth's final generation. This deception required a globe Earth spinning throughout the vast reaches of space, space inhabited by aliens and other sentient life forms. These contrivances created doubt in the Bible, putting science ahead of Scripture, which advises mankind the earth is enclosed and unmoving. They also place the Creator far away from His creation by presenting a universe unimaginably vast.
In the Table Talk of Martin Luther, the great reformer is quoted as having said, "There is talk of a new astrologer who wants to prove that the earth moves and goes round instead of the sky, the sun, the moon, just as if somebody were moving in a carriage or a ship might hold that he was sitting still and at rest while the earth and the trees walked and moved. But that is how things are nowadays. When a man wishes to be clever, he must needs invent something special, and the way he does it, he must needs be the best. The fool wants to turn the whole art of astronomy upside down. However, as Holy Scripture tells us, so did Joshua bid the sun to stand still, and not the earth." In his lectures on the book of Genesis, Luther said, "We Christians must be different from the philosophers in the way we think about the causes of these things. And if some are beyond our comprehension, like those before us concerning the waters above the heavens, we must believe them and admit our lack of knowledge rather than either wickedly deny them or presumptuously interpret them in conformity with our own understanding." The great reformer Jean Calvin, also known as John Calvin, called Copernicus a dreamer who has a spirit of bitterness and contradiction, reprove everything and prevent the order of nature. "We will see some who are so deranged," Calvin said, "not only in religion, but who in all things reveal their monstrous nature, that they will say that the sun does not move, and that it is the earth which shifts and turns. When we see such minds, we must indeed confess that the devil possesses them, and that God sets them before us as mirrors in order to keep us in his fear. So it is with all who argue out of pure malice, and that happily make a show of their imprudence. When they are told this is hot, they will reply, no, it is plainly cold. When they are shown an object is black, they will say, no, it is white, and vice versa. Just like the man who said that the snow is black, for although it is perceived and known all to be white, yet he clearly wished to contradict the fact. And so it is that they are madmen who try to change the natural order, and even to dazzle eyes and benumb the senses.
With the biblical geocentric model rejected, a new explanation was required. A globe Earth, its orbit of the Sun for millions of miles every year, illimitable realms of space with billions of galaxies, each composed of billions of stars with worlds innumerable. All this became necessary to explain the new heliocentric model of the universe, and mankind, over a short time, lost his divine significance. Thereafter was created an environment within which the writings of Charles Darwin found a receptive audience. Once science showed the Bible wrong, the disparager then diverged from her religious guise altogether. Anything suddenly became possible. There was nothing above question, including how the earth seemed to appear in the vastness of space with all else, and the existence of extraterrestrials. The Big Bang Theory is, today, the leading explanation about how the universe began. At its simplest, it talks about the universe as we know it, starting with a small singularity, then inflating over the next 13.8 billion years to the cosmos that we know today. Priest Andrew Pinsent holds advanced degrees in theology from the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome, as well as a doctorate in particle physics from Oxford. In January 2015, he wrote, "Being both a priest and a former particle physicist at CERN, I am often asked to give talks on faith and science. Quite often, young people ask me the following question: how can you be a priest and believe in the Big Bang? To which I am delighted to respond, we invented it. Or more precisely, priest Georges Lemaitre invented the theory that is today called the Big Bang, and everyone should know about him." The author of the Big Bang theory was none other than the Jesuit-trained priest Georges Lemaitre. On October 28, 2014, Sarah Kerr reported,
Speaking to members of the Pontifical Academy of Science, the Pope said it is possible to believe in both, insisting God was responsible for the Big Bang from which all life evolved.
L'inizio del mondo non è opera del caos che deve a un altro la sua origine, ma deriva direttamente da un principio supremo che crea per amore. Il Big Bang, che oggi si pone all'origine del mondo, non contraddice l'intervento creatore divino, ma lo esige. L'evoluzione nella natura non contrasta con la nozione di creazione, perché l'evoluzione presuppone la creazione degli esseri che si evolvono.
Follow from cause to effect. 1. Without a globe Earth circling the Sun through the far reaches of space, we do not have the Big Bang. 2. Without the Big Bang, we do not have evolution. 3. Without evolution, we are more likely to accept creation as an act of intelligent design by a divine creator. The Roman Catholic Church does, in fact, accept evolution. Acceptance of evolution and its integral law of survival of the fittest gave rise to the bloodbaths of the 20th century in which millions lost their lives. Numerous researchers have established incontrovertible connections between the Vatican and the Nazi Party. Regardless of the level of collaboration between the Vatican and the Nazis, what happened after World War II is even more significant. Operation Paperclip smuggled hundreds of Nazi scientists, including top SS officers on trial for war crimes, into the United States for use in America's Cold War space race. One of these Nazi Party members, Wernher von Braun, was promoted to head up NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. Under Operation Paperclip, some 350 German scientists and former intelligence agents were given visas and well-paying jobs. Many of these scientists had questionable pasts. Braun himself had been an active member of the Nazi Party, and his colleague at NASA, Dr. Hubertus Struggold, a specialist in aviation medicine, had performed experiments on concentration camp inmates. The purpose of this massive and illegal undertaking appears to have been for the establishment of a worldwide authority on all things relating to space and astronomy. NASA became the public face of space. It has long acted as a front, providing an unsuspecting world with pseudoscience legitimized by the backing of the U.S. government. NASA is its own monopoly. It controls the dissemination of public information on astronomy, while hiding facts it does not want the public to know. While many countries and universities have observatories, always it is the statements, photographs, and discoveries of NASA that make the news headlines.
Do aliens even exist, and how would we know?
Well, the Kepler satellite currently orbiting in outer space has identified about 50 planets that seem very much Earth-like. In fact, every week we discover another Jupiter-sized planet in outer space.
With NASA in charge of the flow of astronomical information to the public, it appears the Vatican has remained a central player in the truly accurate astronomy not being released to the public. For hundreds of years, the Vatican has owned more telescopes and observatories than any organization, private university, or government. NASA and the Vatican jointly own Lucifer, the world's largest binocular telescope. According to the official Vatican website, the Vatican Observatory is one of the oldest astronomical institutes in the world. And yet, where are the photographs? Where are the news releases of the latest discoveries? Precisely what have the Jesuit astronomers been doing for the last 500 years? Only they know. NASA's public release of information promoting the idea of an expanding, thus ever larger universe of incomprehensible size has led to the supposition there must be alien life on other planets. After all, if the Big Bang produced life on Earth, why couldn't intelligent life have evolved elsewhere?
And we've been hearing a lot lately about dozens of other habitable planets being discovered. And today, NASA is hosting a discussion panel about these habitable planets that are just a short, 10, 20 or so light years away from us. So RT correspondent Megan Lopez joined us earlier from NASA, and I first asked her if we were close to finding another life form in our solar system.
They need to figure out what type of activity that is. But with the organic materials, it means that we could find a footprint of Martian life that used to exist. And if there's plant life that used to exist, it could mean that there's other life that used to exist. So scientists at NASA are very excited. They just unveiled this, and it presents a new puzzle to sort of solve for them.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. But going to Mars should be one of the next series of steps that humans do. The first step should be going back to the moon for a number of technical reasons and exploration reasons, and then after that, Mars, maybe high orbit in Venus atmosphere, maybe going to Europa. There's all kinds of targets to go to, places of interest in our solar system. The only limit to human future is in our own imaginations.
Could be flat, could not be flat. There could be 12 continents. How would you know?
That's a matter of how we draw it up. But I feel like with the world, with the Earth, when you stand back and you look at the horizon, you can see curvature. You can actually see it, unlike a dinosaur or something.
Yeah, or if you fly in one direction, you'll come back around, which in a flat world probably would not happen.
That is true. That is true. But these guys don't go around. They go to Cleveland, and then they go to...
With me now, Bill Nye, CEO of the Planetary Society, and of course, the science guy. Good to have you, Bill.
Good to see you, Craig.
Todd Aiken says believing in evolution requires faith. Paul Brown says it's a lie from the pit of hell. It lies straight from the pit of hell. What goes through your mind when you hear things like that?
Well, first of all, I, as a science educator, have failed. I failed.
No.
Evolution was discovered. It's not something people made up. It was discovered, and the evidence for it is astonishing. It's overwhelming. Now, one thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth. There's no place to go. There's no place to throw your trash. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe not you, but your kids develop ways to mine our landfills. We throw away so much valuable stuff right now, especially raw materials. I may be wrong, of course. I always may be wrong.
So how do we know the Earth is not flat?
We don't. It's flat.
Okay. Glad we established
that. So here it is. If you are small, as we are as humans, and that is the entirety of your, and that is the source of your understanding of the world in which you live, then of course the world looks flat. That's not any different from being a child watching television and presuming that the people you see on TV know you.
They don't know me.
Well, if you're a little child, you think they do know you because you are the center of your own universe. And to mature out of that is very hard, not only when we grow up as humans, but also as we grow up as a civilization. To realize that the Earth is not flat and that it's round means you're not in the center of the Earth. Some of the earliest civilizations we have records of were in the Middle East, okay? And that whole area is called the Mediterranean. Well, Mediterranean translates to Middle Earth. The people lived there were sure they were in the middle of the Earth. That can only be true if you think Earth is flat. Well, we have many lines of evidence to show that Earth is round, including Apollo photos of the round Earth.
The only reason I reference that, of course, is you got into kind of a battle on Twitter about that a while back, earlier this year.
Yeah, it wasn't a fair battle when you know you're right and you know the other person's just completely regressed in their thinking. I only jumped in because there must have been an overlap in the Venn diagram of the followers that I have on Twitter and the followers that B.O.B. had on Twitter. And I don't know how big that overlap is, but it was sufficient for people to come to me and say, B.O.B. is saying Earth is flat. You got to stop him. Say something. Save him from himself. And I'm saying, what? I'm looking, and there they were. And so, and I would have left it alone, because I don't have time for this, until I saw him saying, I use physics and math to show that Earth is flat. Not, those are fighting words. Okay? If he says he's invoking physics and math, let me see where he claimed to do so. I looked where he claimed to do so, and it was profoundly ignorant of formulas and physics related to the physics of establishing the size of the Earth. Now, I don't mind that people don't know things. That's just plain old ignorance. Ignorance shouldn't be thought of as a bad word. All right? Ignorance just simply means you don't know. But if you don't know and you have the power of influence over others, that's dangerous. If you don't know and you don't know that you don't know, that is particularly dangerous. And so I don't blame B.O.B. and I blame the educational system that can graduate someone into adulthood who cannot tell the difference between what is and is not true about this world.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, that's all right. Go ahead. You see the bright light back there?
Incredible.
Wow.
You still see it?
Yep,
Awesome.
it's in the camera. Yeah. Look how fast that's going, man. Look how fast.
Are you getting it on video?
Yep.
Yeah, folks, space shuttle's going off the right side of the aircraft right now. Those of you on the right side of the aircraft, you can see the space shuttle.
Wow.
Those of you on the left side of the aircraft, you can probably see people on the right side of the aircraft looking at the space shuttle. Plane's gonna tip over. Everybody's leaning on the right side. That is remarkable. I would actually sit at the VIP section and watch them launch.
Yeah.
But I've never seen it from the air.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Come on, air right, buddy. That's great.
Can you still see okay?
Yep, thank you.
Now listen, we don't want to have anybody complain because we were late. See, y'all got to see that. Then you can complain because we were late. Got it? All right. Drinks are on the house, too.
Yeah, pan over real quick so I can get a full shot of the ground. I think that's good. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I'm still in awe.
Watch the trajectory of the space shuttle. It doesn't go straight up. It always goes in a curve and out to sea. The point is that they actually go horizontal. The space shuttle goes horizontal. It never goes any further up. It goes horizontal, very, very low down in the atmosphere, because it drops its external tank while it's still in the atmosphere. So, you know, it's still in the atmosphere while it's horizontal, so it never gets any higher. And it goes out of sight, not because it goes too high, because it goes too far downrange. And it seems that nobody's ever on the space shuttle. And the proof of that is the Challenger disaster. I believe it's 1986, the Challenger exploded just after takeoff and killed 7 astronauts. But it turns out that 6 of the astronauts are still alive, and most of them are using their original names. And you can find pictures of them. They're using the same names, and they're doing ordinary jobs now.
Now, one thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth. There's no place to go.
So where's the edge?
Who's to say that there is an edge, and why assume there is one? Is it because when we are introduced to the idea of a flat Earth, it's always depicted like this? In the currently most accepted model, Antarctica is not a continent, but a 360-degree landmass made up of ice that holds the oceans within. When we look at a Gleason's map from 1892 that states at the top that it's scientifically and practically correct, as is. We see this Antarctic ice rim. The Gleason's map is basically an azimuthal equidistant projection, which can be traced back to the year 1000. The AE map is also an official map of the United States Geological Survey, the USGS, and the official logo for the United Nations. The oldest known globe in the world is from 1492. This is something you need to keep in mind because many people argue that the azimuthal equidistant map is just a flattened out version of the globe, when in fact the globe is just a rounded version of this true world flat map. If the flat map came first and it has the ability to convert into a globe without any problems whatsoever, then that should tell you a little bit about how this globe deception was achieved. Now, back to if there is an edge or not. There is no proof that there is an edge past the Antarctic ice wall, but it is speculated by many that perhaps the plane that we live on is either extremely expansive or it's possibly endless. In these two scenarios, it would be logically assumed that more land is being hidden from the general public. In a 1954 interview with Admiral Richard E. Byrd, an American naval officer who specialized in exploration, he had this to say.
But strangely enough, there is left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole, from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
Implying that there is more land past Antarctica. If that uninhabited land was on a globe, it would be in the Indian Ocean. A recent discovery of an old Buddhist map in a newspaper from 1907 seems to support the idea of a vast plain with much more land.
Where does the sun go if the Earth is flat?
Well, the sun neither rises nor sets, but travels in a clockwise circuit from east to west, and only appears to rise and set due to perspective. The sun disappears at the vanishing point of human perspective on the horizon where the ground meets the sky, and since the sun is not 93 million miles away, I repeat, not 93 million miles away, but much closer and smaller, the light emanating from the sun only illuminates about half of the flat plane at once as it makes its daily journey.
What's underneath the flat Earth?
This is obviously an unanswerable question since the assumed edge has never been known to be reached, but many people suppose that whether the Earth is round or flat, that either way, it still must be floating in the middle of outer space. But the idea of outer space goes out the window with the round Earth theory. Many religious texts support an immovable Earth that has its foundations on which it is laid and its pillars by which it is supported. We simply don't know, but we do know that the Earth is obviously fixed in place, as we can tell by our everyday experience of non-movement. What we see in the skies above are illuminated objects making circles around us just as it appears. Whatever this place may be, it's the center of all we survey. Some say that the Earth is the floor of the universe. In the ancient Hebrew conception of the universe, we are surrounded by the waters above and the waters below, known as the Great Deep. The deepest hole ever drilled into the Earth was a total of about 7.5 miles. The very core of the Earth is nothing more than wild speculation, if not another malicious lie. So what's under the Earth? That remains a mystery to us all. But another thing that you can research is what's inside the Earth. Multi-billion-dollar deep underground military bases known as DUMBs, D-U-M-Bs, right?
What about ships and boats disappearing over the horizon?
This is also due to human perspective. They don't go over the horizon, they go into the horizon, moving beyond the limit of our vision and past the vanishing point. But the ships and boats are easily brought back into view with a pair of binoculars, a telescope, and any camera with a good zoom lens. A great question to ask yourself is why can't we see noticeable curvature from 120,000 feet up? But many people claim that the supposed curvature can be seen from the ground by watching boats. It doesn't make sense.
And what about all of the pictures of the Earth?
They are all clearly computer-generated images. They claim this picture from Apollo 17 in 1972 is real, and they also claim that the 2015 Epic Earth picture is real. But NASA employee Robert Simon gave us a glimpse of how they do it when he shared his experience of creating the Blue Marble 2.0 in 2002. He is now called Mr. Blue Marble. He was interviewed and on record stating, "The last time anyone took a photograph from above low Earth orbit that showed an entire hemisphere, one side of the globe, was in 1972 during Apollo 17. NASA's Earth Observing System, EOS, satellites were designed to give a checkup of Earth's health. By 2002, we finally had enough data to make a snapshot of the entire Earth, so we did."
In 2002, Blue Marble 2.0, NASA's Rob Simon made this. Simon's job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it.
That's what this is, a composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture.
So we actually had to take clouds out.
They stashed the clouds for later, went onto the ocean. That came from an instrument that measures phytoplankton in the sea.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it's a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Then
there was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
And then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through. So I just hit Command Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
what I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space, but I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Why are all the other planets round then?
When you compare amateur footage done with professional grade cameras and compare it to NASA's official images of planets and stars, it's clear that NASA images are all computer generated, no different than the photos of Earth. What have become known as planets are round lights that seem to be set over the flat Earth. The so-called planets and stars are not what we have been told they are, and comparing luminous objects that you see in the sky to the Earth under your feet is very ineffective for actually proving the supposed rotundity of the Earth. Since there are no actual photographs of the Earth and motion has never been experienced or proven, it would seem more logical for one to assume that we are on a flat, motionless plane and everything we see in the heavens revolves around us.
What about satellites and GPS?
As crazy as it may sound, satellites are a hoax. Have you ever wondered why there are never any damaged or fallen satellites? And why there are no satellite malfunctions due to constant heating and cooling? It's weird they don't melt in the thermosphere that's over 2,000 degrees. I find myself looking at the moon and wondering why we never see satellites pass by the moon. Did you know there are thousands of miles of fiber optic cables under the seabed that supplies 90% of the Earth's communication, internet, phones, etc.? And GPS works off of cell phone towers. It's called triangulation. Haven't you seen those really tall towers and wondered what they are? Satellite TV is just enhanced radio using ground-based towers. It's all ground-based, just like the old TV antenna. Science fiction author Arthur C. Clarke proposed the idea of geostationary satellites in 1945 in a magazine called Wireless World. And 20 years later, in 1965, they claim to have successfully launched the first commercial geostationary communication satellite. Today, there are said to be thousands, but the odd thing is that trying to prove it only leaves you fruitless.
Is outer space even real?
Yes and no. What you see in the sky, as far as stars and wandering stars,